A busy morning for first responders across the metro.
These are obviously very concerning events, right? That people feel the need to arm themselves, and especially when they encounter law enforcement.
What we know so far about a deadly police shooting in Aurora. And multiple seniors are displaced after a fire at a senior living facility. Well, we're learning about what happened. Plus, it's a weather action day when we can expect to see snow hit the metro, and how much. Thanks so much for joining us here on Denver 7 News at 11. I'm Jason Grenauer. We want to start in Aurora, where police shot a suspect overnight who died at the hospital. Denver 7's Colette Bordelon is live now in Aurora. Colette, how did all this start?
Well, Jason, the first calls came in just before 5 this morning. People reporting a man was knocking on apartment complex doors and that he had a gun. Now, the scene is all cleared up behind me now, but when officers first got here at the corner of Idalia Court and 13th in Aurora, they found a man who matched that description and was in his 30s. Officers apparently gave him commands, things like drop your weapon, show us your hands. They say that didn't work. Shots were fired. The man was hit and he died at the hospital. Now here's what the scene looked like as investigators were piecing together what happened. We still don't know if the man who died fired his weapon, but a gun was recovered from this area. The two officers who shot their guns are on leave, which is typical in these kinds of investigations. Their body-worn camera footage will be used as part of that investigation. Aurora police say the commands were given in both English and Spanish to make sure the man knew what they were saying. Now, this all happened in an area where people are unfortunately familiar with these kinds of events.
These are obviously very concerning events, right? That people feel the need to arm themselves, and especially when they encounter law enforcement, to be armed.
We talked with people who live around here who say they heard the gunshots and were rightfully scared. Some tell us they just don't think this neighborhood is safe.
You go a little bit crazy in this area now. I'm trying to find another place to move maybe next month, for sure. Yeah. I'm not surprised for what happened.
He's not the only person I talked to today who mentioned the thought of moving. Now, when this scene was still active and there was crime tape, we actually watched as kids had to cross under that crime tape just to get to school this morning. We're not too far from Hinckley High School. You may remember a shooting in the parking lot of that school that shocked the community back in November. Live in Aurora, Colette Bordelon, Denver 7.
Colette, thank you. Moving now to another developing story in Lakewood. West Metro Fire spent the morning knocking down flames from a fire at a senior living facility. As Denver 7's Christian Lopez reports, it's still unknown what caused that fire and how many people are now out of their homes.
It was a scary moment for residents here at Brookdale Senior Living Facility. A fire broke out on the 3rd floor around 4:30 this morning. You can see the damage there on the roof. Below that window is where officials say a woman was staying with her pet bird. That is where the fire started. She did not want to evacuate at first, but eventually firefighters were able to get her out. She was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries and is expected to be okay. Residents were all evacuated because there's too much smoke and water damage inside the building. They'll be relocated to another facility. Some are also getting picked up by family members. We spoke with one neighbor who lives right across the street from the facility who said her husband woke her up this morning, and when she looked outside, she saw smoke and some flames.
It was very concerning. I didn't go back to bed. I wanted to make sure just in case anything happened, because when I came out to look, the wind was blowing really hard.
She told me she was thankful firefighters were able to quickly get on the scene and get the fire out. We are being told that 6 to 8 units are completely inhabitable, but we don't know exactly how many people that impacts. Some people are being picked up by family members. We spoke with some people who were picking up their loved ones, but they didn't want to go on camera. They were visibly shaken up by the whole thing. One woman was actually crying as she showed up to pick up her family member. As far as the cause of this fire, that is all still under investigation. Reporting in Lakewood, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
As I stand here, 5 Phoenix police officers are in the hospital after being shot in the line of duty, and a woman has been critically injured.
We're also following developing news in Phoenix, Arizona. As you just heard, 5 officers and a woman were hurt in a mass shooting. Officers were responding to reports of a shooting on the south side of the city. When the first officer got to that house to help, the suspect opened fire. Then someone inside the house put a baby outside and officers rushed to rescue it. 4 of them were wounded, but the baby is okay. Officials say all officers will recover. The suspect is now in police custody after being barricaded inside that home for several hours. Shifting gears to the weather and taking a live look outside back here at home now off Lookout Mountain. Snow is on the way. You can see the shake from the camera. That's probably the storm that's bringing that snow to us. Meteorologist Stacey Donaldson here with us now on your weather action day for the forecast. Of course, everybody wants to know timing and totals.
Right, and we have both of those things. As we go through the rest of the afternoon, we'll see the snow really start to develop a little more here for the Front Range. At this point, we're already seeing snow up toward Fort Collins and just north of the Denver area and east as well for the plains. We also have a little rain mixed in there as well, where the temperatures are a little warmer. Now, as for our weather alerts, we are under a winter weather advisory here for the Front Range and parts south all the way down toward Trinidad for the rest of the afternoon and evening. The top part of this around Denver in effect until 11 o'clock tonight. Farther to the south until 2 a.m. That snow will last a little longer down through southern Colorado. As for our current temperatures, we're in the mid-30s, and so it's pretty much cold enough to support snow here across the area as it moves in. Our highs today only in the mid to upper 30s here for the Front Range. So snow, colder air today. Yesterday those highs were in the 50s and 60s. Today in the upper 30s. So as we go in through tonight, we're going to have that snow showing up. We'll have the complete forecast. We'll talk more about totals in just a few minutes.
All right, Stacey, thank you. Today will be the last day masks are required in Jefferson County Public Schools. The district said their mask mandate will end at midnight, which is a week earlier than originally planned. But the district said masks are still highly encouraged. It brings the school district in line with the end of the county's mask order. Federal law still requires masks to be worn on school buses. Poudre and the Thompson Valley school districts in northern Colorado are also ending their mask mandates today. Meanwhile, President Biden is backing the CDC. It still recommends people wear masks in indoor public spaces if they live in areas with high transmission rates of the virus. Right now, only 8 states still require masks inside public spaces. And the U.S. is ready to roll out millions of COVID vaccines for kids under 5 years old. The FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee will meet next week to go over trial data and make a recommendation on whether Pfizer's vaccine should be authorized for that age group. If the FDA greenlights it, the CDC will make its recommendation. The first shipments of the vaccine could arrive at doctors' offices and pharmacies in as little as 10 days. This is really yet another unique moment in this pandemic. More vaccines for more people, fewer cases, fewer mandates, but the CDC is still pushing caution. ABC's M. Wynn is in Washington now with the latest.
States are rolling back mask mandates despite high community transmission rates in nearly 99% of the nation, with about half of eligible children still unvaccinated.
COVID-19 vaccines for children under 5 could start arriving at pediatricians' offices as soon as February 21st if the FDA authorizes the formula next week. The federal government already prepping 10 million doses, making sure that once the CDC signs off as well, shipments will be ready to go. Today, 2 states, Delaware and Rhode Island, lifting indoor mask mandates, though keeping school mandates in place at least until March. At least 11 states have announced changes to their masking policies this week, with some governors moving to end indoor mandates and some lifting requirements in schools.
I'm feeling like it's premature.
Our friends and our family all come here, and it's nice to show our smiles to everybody.
All this despite the CDC warning their guidance still stands for most Americans to continue wearing masks in indoor public spaces, including schools.
One of the challenging pieces has been how we make guidance that is general enough so that it can be applied to New York City and rural Montana and Indian country, which is our responsibility, and yet have it be specific enough so that people can get their questions answered.
Ahead of next week's FDA meeting on the under 5 Pfizer vaccine, we could learn more from the company today about how well the vaccine works and its safety for this very young population. M. Wynn, ABC News, Washington.
All 5 suspects charged in connection to Elijah McClain's death will be in court this afternoon. 3 former Aurora police officers and 2 paramedics all face charges for his death. It's a status conference where both sides check in with the judge on the progress of the case. Now, McLean's death prompted several investigations, including one from the Attorney General's office that found Aurora's police department had a long pattern of discrimination against people of color and using excessive force. Now the city is taking steps to make changes. A Florida company called IntegraSure will monitor the consent decree the city entered into with the Attorney General's office last November. Now, a consent decree is basically a contract that lays out the changes that need to be made within both the police and fire departments. The city has up to 2 years to comply. Now, the Attorney General's investigation showed what his office called a consistent pattern of illegal behavior at many levels of the police department. Among the findings, officers used force against people of color 2.5 times more often than white people, and that police often applied more force than was needed and immediately escalated situations where a person was not a risk. It also found the city's fire department had patterns of illegally using ketamine, a powerful sedative. That's what Elijah McLean was injected with before he died. Now, with the consent decree, the city needs to address issues in 4 key areas: bias, use of force, documenting first responders' interactions with the public, and hiring practices to make the department more representative of the community that they serve. Now, the monitoring company will provide quarterly updates about how Aurora is doing, and we'll share those with you. Well, Boulder County is one step closer to getting cleaned up after the Marshall fire. Who is now going to be in charge of clearing debris well into the summer? Plus, one nurse who's been giving her all during this pandemic lost everything to the Marshall fire. Our generous viewers stepped in to help.